Okay, so thank you for joining me again on YouTube for another Beehive top feeder introduction. Now, before I get started, this is not what we're talking about today, but I wanted to retread something that I spoke with you about before when I introduced this BeeSmart Designs 1 gallon tank hive top feeder, and it's designed to go with the ultimate hive cover, which is right here, and it has the hole in the middle, and it has the two bushings that accommodate this piece so that you can feed on the top of your beehive. But yesterday we were having a beekeeper breakfast, and somebody brought up that they put this on their hive and it just kept leaking and leaking into the hive. So I decided to come back and revisit that and talk with you about it, because that's very important. You don't want a bunch of liquid syrup going down into your beehive. So what's happening? What's wrong with it? Well, the first thing you want to make sure is that when you have this tankard, that you fill it up all the way. It's a 1 gallon capacity, but fill it right up to the shoulder. Then you want to make sure that you screw this down nice and snug so that it's well seated on that gasket. Then when you go to turn it over, it's going to leak out until it creates the vacuum, right? So then you hold it like this and it leaks out and ultimately stops. So you want to collect that because it's sugar syrup. You don't want to waste it. But then you go to put it on the hive top, and let me tell you what happens. You put this on here. Remember, we've got a gallon of syrup here. You put it on, you close it up, you did everything right, and then you let it go, and then you hear all this sugar syrup running into the beehive. That's bad news, because what happened was the weight of the tank settled onto the cover of the beehive, and now you've got sugar syrup running right into your beehive. You've got an inner cover, but the chances are you've got a hole in that inner cover, dead center, and now the syrup's going to run down inside. So this is kind of a cumbersome thing to do, and it's my responsibility to share that with you, because if I'm reviewing something, I need to let you know what some of the issues you might encounter might be. So this is a great system, but how much leaked in before it stopped? Over a cup of sugar syrup, because I did this test before I actually made the video, and I took it, inverted it like that, and I put this cup in the middle of my table, and then I sat it on just like this to collect the syrup running out until it settled on its own and reestablished the vacuum. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to probably have a cup of sugar syrup going right down into your beehive and onto your bees. If you fill it up like this, flip it over, drain it off, which is the right thing to do, or you can flip it over, give it a squeeze, create a vacuum, and hold it upside down, and you see that it stops dripping. So then, yeah, we think, okay, it's all right, let's put it on here. Then when you do that, and you twist it on, and then you let go, it settles and expresses more liquid syrup out. So your fix is gonna be that you have to put it on the hive cover and let the weight of that tank sit on the hive cover, and then have it over something to collect that excess syrup until the vacuum's reestablished again, and then put this whole thing on the beehive as one piece. Otherwise, if you go directly to the cover with it in place, again, you're going to have a cup of syrup to contend with. Now, I recommend that you, of course, gather it this way and then pour this into your next tank. Most people have more than one. And, of course, the last tank is just going to be wasted, or you save it extra. But that's going to be the procedure. You're going to take the tank, you're going to set it on here, have something underneath of it to collect the water, and then you're going to put that on your hive carefully, and then it won't drip down inside. But that is a lot of syrup, and I want to thank my fellow beekeeper for bringing that up in our discussion at the meeting. I hadn't had that problem because I hadn't actually used this hive top feeder yet. These are the ones that I've used and continue to use, but they have their own issues. Kind of if the hive's tilted, they can drain out, for example. So these have to be perfectly level, and I use these mostly in open feeding situations, and they work very well for that. So if you're going to feed this hive top feeder this way, just know that you're going to have to engage it with the roof, then let it set up the vacuum, and then put it on your hive. That's all. Thanks for watching on that one. Now we're going to get right into what the real purpose of today's video is, to show you another hive top feeder system. So today what I really wanted to talk with you about is this excellent hive top feeder system that comes with its own frame, and it's called the Ceracell Bees for Life, and it's made in New Zealand. We got this one from Blythewood Bee Supply, so I'm going to put a link to them down in the video description for you to check it out. But this actually composes what we call a shim, so it would be a feeder shim. It comes just like this. It's a tank. This is a 10 frame design, and this holds a lot of liquid and dry food for your bees. And since we're coming into spring soon and we're going to want to be feeding the bees, this one can be used throughout the year because it has this open bay, and you can put dry feed in it. You can also put your pollen patties in there and stuff like that. If you're putting dry sugar on, you can leave it open just like this. The cool thing about this one is the bees can come up the corners and through here and get in. They can also come up the center, but if you notice, it's a solid piece right now, and you look at these outlines, they look like snap outs, but they're not. You're going to have to get a drill bit, and you're going to drill holes. What this identifies are the parameters. You don't want to drill outside of these little ovals that are already embedded in the form. So then the bees will be able to come up through the center, and it's open just like this for dry feed, but when you're going to feed it, when you're going to put liquid syrup on your hive, then you're going to have this little cover, and it's cut out so the syrup can come through. The bees, it has a nice rough surface on it so the bees can follow it down. It goes right on this little island here that stands up, and that's the center feed. And then how do we protect the bees from being drowned in the corners? Well, they include these little corner stoppers also, and again, they have that rough texture on the inside too, so the bees can climb on it. And if you notice when you're looking at them, they have this little tab sticking out here, and that might look like that's something you should cut off, but don't do that because it's a standoff to keep this up off the bottom so the sugar syrup can flow in. And once you put that on all of the corners, now you're ready for syrup. Again, if it's dry feed, you have to take these out so that the bees will have access to everything in this tank. And then how does it go in the hive? So here it is, everything holds in place. The island will fall out, of course, but the corners are nice and snapped in. If you want to get them out, you have to push in from the back here, get that tab free, and then pull them out. So then they come out. So when they're clipped in, there's a little tab here that locks it in place. So don't try to force it, just kind of push them in from the outside and then lift up and they come right out. So there's that. There's the island. If we had warm weather, I would love to go outside and show you how this works with the actual bees, but guess what? It's 14 degrees Fahrenheit outside right now, so we're right back into a deep freeze. The box that you put this in comes in pieces. I just glued this up a couple hours ago, and I just used normal wood glue. This is nice thick stock, by the way. So this becomes a 10 frame stackable piece, and then you just put this on it, and there you go. You can paint the outside. So this stacks right on top of a 10 frame box. Oh, let's do that. Now when you put this feeder on your box, you do not have to put an inner cover over it because the bees don't have access up through there. They're going to be confined by this little dome here, and they're going to be confined by these little corner pieces. The cool aspect to these corner pieces is the fact that if this is tipped in any direction and the syrup settles into a corner, the bees are going to be able to get that out. So there again, when you're feeding liquid, these are the pieces you want to place, and if you go to dry, you just take that off, and don't forget to drill out these holes in the top there for your bees to get through. And again, you don't need the inner cover at all because the bees can't get up there. Now, that's how it goes. Very simple. And this is from Blythewood Bee Supply. Excellent, excellent feeder. This is what the underside looks like. There are standoffs here that create bee space if it were to sit flat on a board. And that's it. The joints are rabbet joints. You just glue them up, or you could put screws through there. I used Gorilla wood glue, so this is good to go on its own. And then it just matches up with a 10 frame box, and that's it. You have a feeder on.